witnesses for extraordinary testimony. I'm sitting here in sort of a state of frustration when I think that this committee is expected to be the visionary committee, and also I feel very strongly that our future in research, development, and innovation rests with what we recommend or what we do. And I want an opinion. We're not appropriators on this committee, but we are very mindful of the fact that we have very little money. But I still think that with the help of experts, we can at least lay out what we consider the vision for our country's research and innovation through space research, and then allow the administration or the appropriators to determine what we can and cannot do. I think that currently there's so much frustration as to where NASA is concerned that they really don't know what's coming next. Just looking at what has happened so far in space exploration research, it is clear to me that where we are now came almost exclusively, but certainly from space exploration research. I believe that to stop and decide we can't afford it is simply saying to our future, we won't be there. We won't be there for our young people. We won't be there for the inspiration. We're just going to take a back seat and watch the rest of the world. We won't need to educate our young people if we're not going to give some opportunity for participation. So I guess my question is, how would you help us? We see through much of your testimony, come to a real recommendation that speaks to what we consider to be the need for the future rather than just the money. We know it costs, but we've got to make some real serious decisions. And I don't think we can half-step it. We've got to decide that we're going to invest in our future and eliminate the need for food stamps, or whether we can continue to pay for more and more and more food stamps. And so I am very, very concerned because I know that we are very sensitive to the cost on this committee, and we should be. But we really are not the appropriators. We're the visionaries. We're the people who are supposed to be looking to see what our nation needs to keep pace and to continue to be leaders. So I need to know if you will give me some of your opinions on where you really think we ought to be. If we had, if we were brave enough to say, this is what we need, take it or leave it, Mr. President. Anybody? Mr. Walker, why don't you start?
Well, I agree with absolutely with your premise, and I think that the role that the government has to play in NASA is to assure that its missions are future-oriented. And I think we've spent an awful lot of money in recent years on essentially operational issues and so on. What this committee could do is give us a sense of direction. I mean, do we go back to Mars? Do we do some of these kinds of things? But in order to do that, then you have to commit yourself to some high-risk technologies. Because in my view, it's extremely important that you, for instance, reduce the time that it takes to go to Mars if you're going to do it. The only way it's politically viable is if you can go there in weeks rather than years. The fact is we could develop technologies along those lines, but it's going to take the committee's decision in your authorization process to give NASA those kinds of instructions to move it forward. And what I was suggesting in my testimony is that then there are ways to reach out for some of the other things that you're doing for money. Since I left Congress, I've been involved with an FFRDC. You'll notice that in the Aldrich Commission report, they recommended that at least some of the NASA centers move to that kind of model. Why? Well, because at that point you can have both a government funding stream going into the operation, as well as outside money coming in to the operation to do other things. And that allows you then to have some streams of money that do not necessarily depend upon the appropriations process. I don't know if that's exactly the right model for NASA, but it seems to me that this committee working could come up with something along those lines. That allows you then to look forward as well as to find the resources necessary, not wholly government resources. And that's what I'm trying to suggest in the testimony. I think that's possible. I've worked with a number of these startup companies that are looking to do really exciting things. They would love to have NASA as a partner. And you have got to figure out a way to find the ways for NASA to be able to do that partnership on a very, very routine basis.
Thank you. I know my time has expired, but yours have not, so I will relent and let them answer.
If I could follow that comment, our study task stated that any recommendations made by the committee will be predicated on the assumptions that NASA's out-year budget profile will be constrained due to continuing deficit reduction. So we looked at a budget-constrained environment. We do believe, and we concur with what you were saying in terms of the long-term view, and that strategic goals and objectives are a starting point, and that there is a consensus about those strategic goals and objectives. For example, as we had many witnesses and did our work, we found little evidence that an asteroid mission, for example, was widely accepted, whether inside of NASA, outside in industry or internationally, and so it's important that there's clarity in terms of the direction, and then NASA's strategic plan can, in fact, with clarity, identify what the trades are in that portfolio going forward, and there is a starting point upon which some choices can be made.
I think you'll find industry also joining with others on the panel saying that absolutely partnerships, the ability to bring together public and private sector and international conjoining resources is certainly an excellent step in the right direction, that if this committee, through the upcoming reauthorization process, because I would remind us all that it's not so far away again, that you all are going to have to tackle that, would be excellent. I also would say that regardless of destination, because there are conflicting views about destination, as you even hear on this panel, let's keep in mind that building the capabilities to get into deep space, the ability both in terms of heavy launch as well as crew capsules and tackling some of the research that's daunting right now still. We don't have all the answers on deep space radiation, for example, and issues of bone density. So there's some critical research that's got to be continued. But remember, when they supported the F-1 rocket back in the 50s, they didn't know where they were going to go, but it made all the difference. So bear that in mind.
Well, actually, I was motioning to my colleague to the right because I thought that he put his finger on it in terms of the people. That is the combination of small satellites, suborbital missions, zero-G aircraft, things that provide really tangible hands-on experience is the most crucial thing to give people a sense of the future. Sometimes when it's said to me, it says, well, you know, we've been to the moon already, I usually have to respectfully say, well, my father's generation went to the moon. We have not gone to the moon. That generation is past. We need to build and rebuild the people with the expertise. One of the most exciting things about the commercial industries and the partnerships that Congressman Walker noted is that opportunity to provide for hands-on real hardware and real flight experience, for which there is no substitute. And so I think the building of capabilities, whatever destinations we want to go for, obviously I'm a partisan of a particular approach. None of that is possible without hands-on expertise, and I thought my colleague really nailed that one.